All right, guys, let's start looking at our vocabulary introduction now. You're going to use the word bank below to fill in the blank questions about the causes of World War I. Oops. I know that each of these words are only going to be used once. So the first word we have here is the Treaty of Versailles. This should not be surprising to you. The definition of it is the agreement between Germany and the Allied powers. Those were the big three or the big four, depending on how you want to think about them, that ended World War I. It held Germany responsible for the war and imposed harsh consequences on Germany, like reparations, like reducing the size of their armies. We wrote an entire DBQ on it, so you should remember it. An example of how this led to World War II, the Treaty of Versailles made Germany so weak economically, politically, militaristically, that they turned to Adolf Hitler and the Nazis to save them. Hitler had this very charismatic way of suggesting that he was going to help bring about the end of the Great Depression in Germany and restore Germany to its former glory. The next word we described from up above, it's the key vocabulary word for today, is Japanese expansion. Again, this was the period from 1931 to 1942 in which Japan attacked and took control of other countries in the Pacific, namely Korea and China. An example of how this caused World War II is that Japan invaded Manchuria. I'll show you a map of where Manchuria is. 1931, and China in 1937 to gain power and resources. They're an island nation, so you had very little of that. That makes sense. Our next word is fascism. We've talked about types of authoritarian governments. Fascism is an example of a form of government where the country is controlled by one party and one dictator, the absolute leader, the absolute ruler. The government controls all parts of people's lives, and argument is not allowed. In fact, it's punished. This picture here is of Adolf Hitler in this tan color, and Benito Mussolini, who was the leader of Italy at this time. They're both examples of fascist dictators. We talked about totalitarian. That's a form of fascism. Sorry, guys. But we know Mao Zedong, we know Hitler, we know Benito Mussolini, we know Joseph Stalin. These are all examples of dictators. The next word is appeasement, the action of giving something what they want in order to avoid a conflict, sort of to please somebody. It's appeasement. Britain and France tried to use the policy of appeasement with Hitler because they didn't want another war. There's actually a bunch of stories about how the Prime Minister of Great Britain at the time went to Germany and met with Hitler several times and had dinner with him and stayed at his house in this attempt to have this appeasement policy to not start another world war. And he actually thought he was making headway when in fact Hitler was talking smack about him behind his back. So that's great. And then this last one, we had that whole unit on the Great Depression, but it's a period from 1929 to the start of World War II where the global economy collapsed and there was widespread unemployment, poverty, and suffering. The Great Depression left countries so weak and poor that leaders like Hitler, Mussolini, those are the big ones, were able to use people's desperation to gain power. We'll also talk a little bit about Emperor Hirohito of Japan, not in this lesson, but in another. He did not come to power during this time, but he definitely used his power during this time to his advantage. So similar, but he didn't gain power through the Great Depression. All right, here's where you're going to use these words and fill in the blanks for each of these questions. Remember, you're only using each word one time. So your words again are Treaty of Versailles, fascism, Great Depression, appeasement, and Japanese expansion. So number 6 is saying, blank is a form of government led by evil dictators who often believe that their race and people are superior to others. So I'm looking at my choices. And if you're following along, you should put the word fascism in this blank. All right, number 7. The blank destroyed economies all over the world. People were poor, jobless, and desperate, and in some countries turned to fascist politicians like Hitler to save them. Which of these fills that in? I know that it is the Great Depression. So I would fill in the Great Depression in that blank. Number 8. Japan is a small island, and in 1931 ran out of land and resources. Their solution was to invade other countries and take their land and resources instead. This process was called, all I have left is Treaty of Versailles, appeasement, and Japanese expansion. Which of those most likely fits there? If you're following along with me, you should put Japanese expansion in that blank. So all we have left now is Treaty of Versailles and appeasement. Let's see what number 9 is. The blank ended World War I with the goal of punishing Germany. Germany was made so weak that they turned to Adolf Hitler to restore power. That's a pretty easy one. We did a whole unit on it. We wrote several essays. I know that that is the Treaty of Versailles. Forgot my S in there. And then last but not least, the policy of appeasement by process of elimination. EAS. Was followed by Britain and France in an attempt to avoid war. This policy involved giving in to Hitler's demands and was ultimately successful. So you should have fascism for number 6, Great Depression for number 7, Japanese expansion for number 8, Treaty of Versailles for number 9, and the policy of appeasement for number 10. Down below, we have a bonus vocab challenge. Think of a time in your life when you tried appeasement, like giving somebody what they wanted to avoid a fight. Did it work? Why or why not? You're going to answer in this box below. One time that I tried appeasement was, and it did or didn't work because. Once you've done that, you can go on to the guided practice and follow up on the next video.